Hello, and welcome to the podcast of the Gem State Substack. I'm your host, Brian Allman. Make sure to subscribe at gemstate.substack.com, where free subscribers get 2 to 3 or even 4 or 5 posts a week, and paid subscribers get something nearly every day, plus early access to videos and podcasts like this one. You can find me on Twitter at GemStateBrian. The right-wing response to the barbarity committed by Hamas terrorists against Israel earlier this month has been resolute. Conservative author Kurt Schlichter has called for the complete destruction of Gaza on Twitter. French President Emmanuel Macron has threatened to deport anyone protesting on behalf of Hamas. And even Harvard University, a bastion of left-wing agitprop, has been pressured to blacklist students who signed an open letter supporting Hamas. My question is, where is that resolve when it comes to the enemies of America? I think this reveals something about our discourse. Many on the right have been trained out of strong feelings of American nationalism, and I think a lot of the over-the-top support for Israel comes out of a desire for an acceptable substitute. On the other side, leftists, many of whom are migrants or second-generation immigrants, they protest in favor of Hamas, in favor of terrorism against men, women, and children, as a proxy for what they want to do to us. What do you think decolonization meant? Asked Najma Sharif, a Somali-American writer for NBC, Teen Vogue, and other outlets. When you remember that decolonization has been a goal of leftists in colleges, political offices, and corporate boardrooms for decades now, this should send a chill up your spine. People like Sharif, militant minorities who hate the historic American nation, see images of Hamas terrorists murdering women and children, and they dream of doing that to you and me someday. Unfortunately, I believe that Westerners have lost the courage of their convictions. At some point, perhaps in the wake of World War II, we came to believe in a universalism, the idea that all people believed in and desired the same things we did. The self-evident truths of our Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, that we're endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that the purpose of government is to protect these rights, went from being the product of centuries of English and Western philosophy to something that was inherent in the whole world. We created the concept of human rights that superseded what our founders considered the rights of freeborn Englishmen. In doing so, we lost both perspective and a willingness to fight for our own people. If the things that we once considered hallmarks of Western civilization, and of our mother country England in particular, were really just a basic part of all people, then what was ever special about the West in the first place? What does American exceptionalism mean in that context? It simply becomes a rallying cry, no more important than rooting for one football team over another. As Barack Obama said, we have American exceptionalism, just like the Greeks have Greek exceptionalism. What was once a belief in our own unique greatness has been watered down into an acceptably inoffensive patriotism. But an inoffensive patriotism cannot hold a civilization together. The medieval Arabic historian Ibn Khaldun wrote of something he called asabaya, a sort of group solidarity, a social cohesion created by a shared sense of greatness. You often see this exhibited in young, ambitious groups, such as the Turks who conquered Constantinople, or even the Taliban who outlasted the American occupation of Afghanistan, or our own ancestors who settled the New World. Our fathers believed in manifest destiny, the idea that we were destined to build a nation that stretched from sea to shining sea. Americans today lack that sense of greatness, that asabaya. We're trained from birth to apologize for our very existence, to feel guilt because of slavery or racism, even if our own ancestors had nothing to do with those things. Everything that was great about our ancestors is considered merely a part of humanity, while everything evil about humanity is made to be their, and our, direct responsibility. Notice that the minority groups protesting against Israel, and against America, they don't have those qualms. They don't apologize for their ancestors. Second-generation Somali immigrants, like Najma Sharif, believe that they're destined to destroy the decaying remnants of Western civilization in the same way that the Ottoman Sultan Mehmet II believed it was his destiny to sweep away the remnants of the old Roman Empire when he conquered Constantinople. They believe that history is moving in their direction, and that anyone who stands in their way will be swept aside. They aim to decolonize the entire world, and we lack any coherent ideology to oppose such genocidal rhetoric. Western civilization used to be able to defend itself. In the year 732, Charles Martel defeated the Muslim armies at Troyes stopping their advance into Western Europe. The remnants of the Christian kingdoms of Visigothic Spain spent 8 centuries reconquering the Iberian Peninsula, and then they imposed the Spanish Inquisition to maintain the integrity of their faith. Jan Sobieski saved Christendom at the gates of Vienna in 1683, turning back the Ottoman Turks as they attempted to break into Europe from the east. Where are the Charles Martels and Jan Sobieskis today? Who will stand now for Christendom and Western civilization? I think that's why we see so much fervor right now for a conflict on the other side of the world. It's easy to use Israel versus the Palestinians as a proxy for America versus those who would destroy us. American conservatives can get away with saying they want to utterly destroy Hamas and expel every Arab from the Gaza Strip, but they can't say the same thing about BLM or Antifa in polite company. We can agree that Israel has a right to build walls on its border and restrict immigration so as to remain a Jewish state. But any inkling of saying that America can do the same thing to maintain its own cultural and religious balance is quickly dismissed as racism and white supremacy. History podcaster Dan Carlin, still the best in the business even if he only releases 1 or 2 episodes a year, would surely be the first to say that America does not have the right to use immigration policy to maintain demographic integrity. However, in a Twitter discussion about Israel, he defended Israel's policy of doing that very thing. Quote, "They quickly lose control of their own country via birth rates and the ballot box. Can you see why they might not be too enthusiastic about what to them looks like conquest via democracy?" End quote. Conquest via democracy is a great way of putting it. Thank you, Dan. I think it's an apt descriptor of what's going on at our southern border right now. Millions of people are entering this country, some legally, many illegally, who do not buy into the same Western values that we take for granted. They will tilt the balance of power, both by being counted for appropriation in the House of Representatives and the Electoral College, as well as by directly voting once they gain citizenship, or when their children grow up. Yet we're not supposed to say that. Last year, the Anti-Defamation League condemned Mark Steyn and Tucker Carlson for talking about demographic replacement. However, as Tucker then pointed out, the ADL itself agrees that Israel should protect itself against that very same demographic replacement. Why are there 2 different standards? Though I don't want to see the United States drawn into another Middle Eastern war, and I'm generally opposed to massive amounts of foreign aid, I support the right of Israel to defend itself and maintain itself as a nation, as a people. I just want the same thing for America. Rather than the primary debate in Congress being how much money we should give to Ukraine and or Israel, I want our representatives to be competing with each other over who will build the biggest border wall. For the amount of money we've dumped into the laundromat we call Ukraine, we could have built a dozen border walls, each 10 feet higher than the last. Alas, unless something major changes soon, we're going to lose this country. Either we're going to lose it to some third world horde who, though lacking the deep history, culture, and philosophy of Western civilization, still have that shared sense of greatness, that asabaya that the West lacks, or we'll fall to a faceless blob of globalist totalitarian technocrats who are attempting to erase any sense of community in what used to be the American people. Neither outcome appeals to me. My ancestors didn't cross the sea on cramped sailing vessels, establish outposts of civilization in the wilderness, pack up their things and move west every generation, fight in numerous wars from the Revolution to World War II, only to see my generation give up America without a fight. The young men who landed on Omaha Beach at Normandy in 1944, facing mortars and machine guns and certain death, did so because they believed they were saving Western civilization from tyranny. What would they have thought if they knew that in less than a century, it would be frittered away like loose change at a slot machine? I say no. This country's my heritage, and I'm going to fight for it. America is the last outpost of Western civilization, and Idaho is the last redoubt of America, so this is where we must make our stand. We must resist efforts to decolonize or abolish whiteness or whatever euphemism for genocide that comes out of academia and media. Fill your bookshelves with the great books. Teach your children the history and stories of our ancestors. Stop apologizing for the alleged evils of our ancestors and start remembering their achievements instead. Get politically involved so as to maintain and build anew our society, rather than watching it decay from the sidelines. You must thoroughly vet the people that you vote for, to ensure they'll use their influence and authority in the right way. Too many of our elected representatives think their job is just to move money from the taxpayer to various agencies and special interest groups, and have little interest in anything greater than that. Theowold, former special assistant to President Trump, and until recently the Solicitor General of Idaho, spoke a few days ago about an initiative that he promoted from within the Trump administration that all new federal buildings should be built in the classical style. Having beautiful buildings might seem like a trifle, and the Biden regime canceled that initiative as soon as they took power, but it really does mean something. There's a difference between going to work for a government agency in a brutalist cement monstrosity versus going to work in a beautiful classical or Art Deco building. One of those crushes the soul while the other lifts it up. One makes you feel like a nameless, faceless cog in a giant machine, while the other makes you feel like the inheritor of a great civilization. It's time to reclaim the courage of our convictions. Consider the slogan, "Make America Great Again." With 4 simple words, Donald Trump reignited a sense in the American people that we are the heirs to a great nation, and that our task is to reclaim that greatness. I say that it can start here, in Idaho. My name is Brian Ullman, and this has been the podcast of the Gem State Substack. Subscribe today at gemstate.substack.com, and I'll see you next time.